my special Canadian mask for special days. Welcome to NACTV Reads the News. My name is Val Wilson, and I'm one of the many volunteers that help create programming at our station. NACTV can be seen on MTS Channel 30 or 1030, Westman Cable Channel 12, Bell Satellite Channel 592, or online at nactv.tv. These programs are made possible by our volunteers, staff, advertisers, as well as donations made by you, the viewers. If you are enjoying your NACTV experience, please consider supporting us by either donation or by volunteering. You can contact our office at 204-476-2639 or at NACTV at wcgwave.ca. So this is a special edition for Remembrance Day, November the 11th. The Banner Press has put together a special B-section volume, Remembrance Day 2020. The front page is a headline saying, "Sewing to say thank you." Mary Murray, World War II survivor and Canadian resident of approximately 50 years, stands with a batch of quilts she made for veterans and returned soldiers. Some of the quilts also come with pillowcases, which the soldiers are allowed to take with them if they are on duty. By Casper Warehand, Neepawa Banner Press. At 80 years old, Mary Murray is an active Neepawa resident. Not believing in standing still, Murray still fills her days with various activities, such as tending to her garden, jigsaw puzzles, making a couple of purses after breakfast, or quilting. However, her quilting has a story behind it that some may not know. I was a child of the Second World War. I was born in the middle, and our home in England was bombed. We were under the kitchen table with our blankets around us when our whole house caved in on us. And we had to wait for the soldiers to come and dig us out, said Murray. I can remember I was only 3.5 being carried down the street by a soldier, and his uniform was very itchy, rough. I was in my nightie because I was 3 o'clock in the morning, and he carried me down to Miss Mitchell's house. It was the only house left standing in the whole road. There were no windows in it, but at least it was still standing. All the children were taken there and put to bed for the rest of the night. Murray doesn't know how long her family waited to be dug out, but distinctively recalls the dust from the aftermath of the house collapsing. I can remember that all in your mouth because it's bricks and mortar is not wood like it is here, Murray explained. Murray added, every night the sirens would go off, every single night. And of course, as soon as you heard the sirens, because it always woke you up, it was always in the middle of the night. You had to grab your pillow and a blanket off your bed and run downstairs. We had no shelters or anything, so we hid under the kitchen table. Because it was oak table, Mom would pack us in our pillows and blankets. It was 4 of us. The date of the bombing that collapsed Murray's house is remembered perfectly. February the 23rd, 1944. At this time, the Nazis were trying to claim what Murray says is now part of the London airport. I think it was called Wesley Fields. We called it Hatton Aerodrome. And that's where the Spitfires took off from to protect London, because that was the very first runway. And then it later became Peace Row. In addition to these events, despite her father's being unable to sign up due to severe asthma, Murray's uncles and second cousin were in the military. Her brother also signed up when he was 18 and now retired, still has a son in the military. So it's kind of been with us. And when I heard of all these young people coming home hurt, I thought it would be nice to show my appreciation for what they did for us, Mary entrusted. They gave me my freedom, and without our military, I wouldn't have my freedom. I prize it very, very highly, and to me, quilting is my way of saying thank you. Murray explained that she started quilting around November of 2009, giving away her first quilt in August of 2010. following the return of soldiers to Canadian Forces Base, CFB Shiloh, from Afghanistan. The recipient was the first quilt, was Casey Crane. He had been injured in Afghanistan, and I think there were about 13 in that block that were hurt when an IED exploded over there, Murray relayed. 2 were killed and the other 13 were all injured and were brought home. Then over the next few months, I gave them more quilts. And since then, as I have heard of soldiers getting injured, I have given a quilt to each of them. Murray estimates that as of August the 14th this year, she has given approximately 31 quilts to the Princess Patricias at Shiloh, 60 lap quilts to Aryan veterans, 2 quilts to the Neepawa Legion for raffle prizes, which helped pay for the cannon refurbishing, and 1 large memorial freedom quilt, each to the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Battalions. Though Murray may not be able to make individual quilts for everyone, the freedom quilts are a gift to all. The avid quilter also keeps a book filled with names and photos of all the people she's given them to. One young man in Hamilton, Christopher, had a back injury and was a quadriplegic. So he's in a wheelchair, but he had about 6 operations and they got him back to use of his arms. So he can wheel himself around. He couldn't do anything at one point, and now he's home again in Hamilton. The Town and Veterans Organization got him a van. He can wheel himself out of the van, and it lifts him up in the wheelchair into the van. And then it moves forward, locks itself in, and he can drive his van. So it's given him some mobility. Mary recalled with an audible smile, he's lost the use of his legs, and he's only a young man. It's just amazing. So I got one of our soldiers from Shiloh who was with him, and when he got injured, Brian Adams, and gave him a quilt. And then when I found out he was going to Ottawa for a spell, I got Brian to take Christopher a quilt. When he got to Ottawa, he got permission to go into Hamilton with his quilt and present it to him for me. And then he sent me the picture. It was wonderful that I could give Christopher his quilt. Murray's quilting established a long-term relationship with the Shiloh base, and since 2010 has returned CFBO Shiloh every year for numerous events. Murray has been invited to attend everything from the yearly Christmas dinner, changes of command, to the renaming of buildings. I can take a guest, so I usually take my neighbor along the street because she was a veteran. She was in the Air Force many, many years ago. She's 87 now, said Murray. And when they had a special presentation for Afghanistan, they had a special wall that's now in Ottawa. I took a bunch of other ladies from in town here, about 14, and went over to see the memorial. Murray added, 1 year, our Queen's representative in Canada, Clarkson, came to help commemorate the building. You get to meet quite a few people there, not just the soldiers. Her expansion into masks. Although the extenuating circumstances caused by COVID-19 have resulted in a cutback on visits, Murray still maintains communication with the Shiloh base, ensuring they always have a quilt on hand. Under these same circumstances, Murray's sew's activities have expanded to make masks as well. And after speaking with her daughter, the head of infectious diseases at St. Paul's in Vancouver, Murray was all set for production. She said, Mom, if you're going to do it properly. I'll send you some stuff. And she sent me 100 filter. I sew it inside each mask so it can go anywhere, says Murray. It's 2 layers of cotton inside and out, and they also have a chin insert so it fits under the chin properly. And they have a wire for the nose to make them fit. They fit real tight, and they go in and out as you breathe. They move with you. Murray has been coordinating at Shiloh's commanding officer, Secretary Karen Olmsted, to arrange mask pickups. These masks are then distributed to the soldiers to help keep them safe. Writer's note. It is also worth noting that Murray has also given a significant amount of quilts to other individuals and causes, such as frontline workers, Buds and Bloom, and kids at the hospital in trauma. Masks have been made for frontline workers as well. Thank you, Mary Murray. Museum project highlights area veterans. Submitted by the Neepawa Banner Press. So we do have some pictures. We have pictured Private Nelson Russell Buchanan, a World War II Anna Mary Honor, Lieutenant Cecil Menzies Francis, Wilbur Henry Dixon Drayson, Light Anti-Aircraft Regiment, and Private Lindsay Leroy Francis. So, Neepawa Beautiful Plains Museum has been hard at work preparing a project that aims to honor area World War I and World War II veterans. The project was originally set for the release this year, but the museum was unfortunately unable to open for the 2020 season due to COVID-19 conditions. At this time, the museum is making plans for reveal for a possible 2021 reopen. The following are just a few of the stories captured within. Nels Russell Buchanan, number 1000116, was born August 4th, 1890, to Andrew and Letita Buchanan at Stony Creek, Manitoba, just west of Neepawa. He received his education at Stony Creek and Oakleaf schools. Nels enlisted in the Army of World War I on November 22, 1915, and served with the Winnipeg Grenadiers and the 226th Battalion. He was sent overseas to Europe and fought in the battles of Vimy, Ypres, and Somme. He received his discharge from the 78th Canadian Infantry Battalion on June 12, 1919. He also served in World War II. He was the Home Guard at Red Rock in Nanaimo, British Columbia. He and his wife, Mary Alice Buchanan, were married on November 28, 1910, in Rosedale Municipality. Nels passed away on December the 7th, 1969, in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and is buried in Riverside Cemetery in Neepawa, Lot 9, Block 3, Range 7. AW2 Anna Honor. Anna Mary Honor, W308910, was born on August 8, 1914, to John and Mary Johnson Honor at Aylesbury, Buckinghamshire, England. The family came to Kelwood, Manitoba from England in 1928. Mary enlisted in the Royal Canadian Air Force Women's Division on November the 2nd, 1942, and served until 1945. She was stationed at Gander, Newfoundland, Dauphin, and Winnipeg, Manitoba. She was the first Kelwood girl to join the WAAF. Mary passed away on February the 16th, 2000, and is buried in the Kelwood Cemetery. Cecil Francis was born on August 1st, 1913, to Harriet and Elizabeth Close. Francis in Swan Lake, Manitoba. He was the twin brother to Lindsay. The family moved to Norgate, Manitoba on January the 1st, 1926, where they continued farming. Cecil enlisted in the Second World War and trained at Fort Osborne, Shiloh, and Portage. He then went overseas with the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry. In December 1943, he served for some time in North Africa before proceeding to Italy. He was discharged in December of 1945. Cecil married Sarah Yates on May 20th, 1972, and for health reasons, they moved to Neepawa from McCreary in the summer of 1979. He received the following decorations: 1939 to 45, Star, the Italy Star, France, Germany Star, Canadian Volunteer Medal, and Clasp, and the 1939 to 45 War Medal. Cecil passed away on May 15, 2003, and was buried in the Riverside Cemetery at Neepawa. Wilbur Drayson. Wilbur Henry Dixon Drayson was born March 3, 1917, to Ernest and Mary Atkinson Drayson on the west half 251316 Mentmore. Wilbur received his education at Osprey and Neepawa schools. In March 1942, he enlisted and served with the 8th Light Anti-Aircraft 4th Division. He was sent overseas and landed in England on August of 1942, the very last day of the ill-fated raid on Dieppe. Wilbur's division was supposed to be part of the backup troops for Dieppe, but when the tragedy occurred, they remained in England until D-Day, June 6, 1945. He was with his outfit throughout the tedious trek through France by way of Caen, Falaise, and Belgium. His division was used in the assault of Anti-Warpen, and the task was to dislodge the Germans from the Châle des at the mouth of the harbor, which they did after a long, bitter struggle. On November the 26th, the Allied convoy arrived, and from the air it trekked into Holland and then crossed the Rhine River when the war was virtually over. Wilbur returned to Canada aboard the Queen Elizabeth I in February of 1946. He settled into farming with his father, and on September 18, 1948, Wilbur married Irene Buick at Pearson, Manitoba. They remained farming on the home place. Wilbur passed away on October 16, 1997. He was buried at Riverside Cemetery in Neepawa. Lindsay Francis. Lindsay Leroy Francis was born on August 1st, 1913, to Harry and Elizabeth Close Francis at Swan Lake, Manitoba. The family moved to Norgate, Manitoba, 1926, where they continued to farm. Lindsay enlisted in the Second World War on November 13, 1942, in the Fort Osborne Barracks at the Winnipeg. He trained at Shiloh and Portage and went overseas to England. He was hospitalized in England before he went to Italy with the Princess Patricia Canadian Light Infantry. He and members of his regiment were sent to guard a bridge near Florence. The Germans had mined the bridge before leaving the region, and Lindsay was killed when one of the mines exploded. His twin brother, Cecil, also a member of the same regiment, was only a short distance from the area. He heard the explosion but was not aware his brother had been killed until later. Lindsay was killed in action on August 6, 1944, and is commemorated at the Florence War Cemetery in Italy. Lindsay received the following decorations: the 1939-45 Star, the Italy Star, the Defense Medal, Canadian Volunteer Service Medal, and the 1939-45 War Medal with clasp. Francis Bay 64 was named after him. His full service records are available at ancestry.ca. So we're going to read more from the B6. Echoes of War from Beautiful Plains, continued from B4 and B5. The airport and Carberry. The coming of the airport to Carberry has put our town on the map of Canada in larger letters than ever before. It is unfortunate that a world conflict should be the indirect cause of such an improvement and progress as Carberry has witnessed the last 2 years, but no one can deny that certain permanent improvements about the town are directly attributed to the coming of the airport. To list only a few, the hard surfacing on Main Street, the improvement of highways in the vicinity, the erection of new buildings, and the renovation and repairs to many others. The war, we hope, will not be of long duration, but the changes it has brought to Carberry are in no sense transitionary. Wartime Souvenirs of Carberry, 1942. Mr. J.W. Humphrey. Mr. Humphrey was responsible for initiating the pioneer work at Moncton, which resulted in the formation of the Moncton Flying Club, and subsequently undertook expansion and movement to number 35 at Neepawa. While we may respect him as a businessman for the superb organization ability he has shown to the average member of the staff, he is worthy of far more respect as a man and close friend. It can be said of him that no matter how trying and pressing his affairs become, he has been always ready to stop and chat with friendless possible manner with anyone who greeted him. Those of us who work with him are able to appreciate fully how fortunate the school has been in having its head so tolerant and able a manager as J.W. Perhaps this is because of his last war experience. Cheatham. Private John Cheatham, one of 4 boys from Beautiful Plains who fell in the terrible battle of Passchendaele. It was his first big battle and the last seen of him. He and a comrade were wounded and had started for a dressing station. It's supposed that they were buried by the shell. He enlisted at the age of 17 years in the Neepawa Company of the 226th Battalion, was transferred to the 14th Reserve in England, and was afterwards sent to France with the 78th Battalion. John Lord. John Lufus Lord, son of Mr. and Mrs. Isaac Lord, was born in Dublin, Ireland, and came to Canada at the age of 12. He enlisted in the company of the 226th Battalion at the age of 18 and was killed in the Battle of Lens. Private McMartin. William McMartin enlisted on March 20th, 1916 in the 170th Winnipeg Battalion. He was transferred to the 16th Canadian Scottish Battalion November 1916 and was killed at Vimy Ridge April 9th, 1917. Lawrence Buchanan. Lawrence Buchanan, son of John Buchanan, formerly of Neepawa, enlisted in the Neepawa Company of the 226th Battalion in the spring of 1916. He was killed in action at the Battle of Passchendaele. He was a messenger, and it is told of him that he delivered his message after his neck had been broken. William Smith. William Smith enlisted with the 226th Battalion and was transferred on the 17th of March, 1917 to the 43rd Highlanders. He died of wounds received in France in 1917. His home was in Scotland, where his mother still resides. Billy was 29 at the time of his death. He had been in Neepawa District for several years and was a general favorite. Beautiful Plains War Echoes. I'll skip back to where I left off. Area Military Collection holds countless stories. By Casper Warenhan, Neepawa Banner Press. Part of an extensive wartime collection in the area has been shared with the Banner Press. Simply a few books alone hold an innumerable amount of stories and photos of times past and those who lost while in service. The collector noted that this passion for his story came from their history teacher and former bomber pilot Harry A. Morton in 1960s. He was awesome. In those years, we had British history instead of Canadian history, and he made it interesting, said the collector. I'm not sure where my military history interest came from, but I got really into military history and then Canadian military history. The collection, while primarily remaining personal for the time being, is also gradually being donated to facilities such as Shiloh Air Museums. Written below are just a few of the stories that can be gleaned from the documents. Just gonna have a little sip of water here. Photographic editor. Flight Lieutenant R.W.K. Persner, universally known as Robin, was able to find time from his duties as senior medical officer, which occupied him at least 25 minutes every day, to become a photographer-in-chief for our journal. He took some 400 photographs, including nearly all those which appear in his book, and he followed various personnel about the station like a dog until they stood still in bunches for him to photograph. We think that it would be agreed a better man could not have been chosen, and if anyone is dissatisfied with their portrait, the rest of us can be assured that it was their own fault. Parachute section. B. Wrigley is a familiar figure to all flying personnel. As he spends his life wandering in apparently aimless manner around the hangar, in actual fact, he pokes with an inquiring mind into the well-being of every parachute he can see, occasionally whipping one away to the consternation of its owner to dump it on the assistant CFI's desk and gripe about its deplorable condition. Number 35, EFTS Neepawa. Postal Services. The prompt and efficient delivery of the mail is a tremendously important factor in the maintenance of morale, and in the hand of Mrs. Dot McCoy, this has been achieved. With infinite patience, she has pushed through small openings in a cage of vast volume of good and bad news, which have gladdened or saddened thousands of pupils and civilians who have passed through the schools. As a winner of wagers, she is good. As a cooker of spaghetti, well, she makes it like a true Winnipegan. Number 35, EFTS Neepawa. So the pictures, I will read the caption below. I'm not sure what you'll see of the pictures, but you can see some of them. Page B4, top left. The Wartime Souvenir of Carberry was published in 1942 by the Carberry News Express in the interest of the visiting airmen and the surrounding district. As can be seen on the cover, it was sold for 50 cents. Top right, these smiling folks were pictured in front of the War Services Club on the corner of Main and 3rd in Carberry. The building was headquarters for all forms of community activity in which Carberry townsfolk and RAF personnel united. Those pictured are, starting from back left, Sergeant G.W.A. Lewis, London. Honorable Flight Sergeant A.W. Cartwright, Sheerness. Honorable F.O.H.F. Bath, Somerset. Chairman Mrs. Harris Lewis, London. Mrs. Vernon Nunn, Liversedge, New Leeds. And Mrs. Margaret Grandison, Dundee. They were the executive committee of the Living Out Airmen's Club. Middle picture, right, is in his off time, this unnamed soldier was busy doing something the Army doesn't teach you how to do. Feed a baby. Bottom, a group of veterans, which includes the following Carberry vets: Owen Stanger, those Leeds, W.D. McMillan, W.N. Balfour, G. Johnson, F. Clark, William Gilmore, W.D. Uner, Alex, Jamie, J. Whitlaw, Eric Court, A. Sharp, and H.G. Eulathorn. Also among them were veterans from Glenborough who are unnamed. Page B5, that's these on this. These photos are from the number 35 EFTS Neepawa book dated 1944. The book contains a history of the number 35 EFTS RAF in Neepawa. Pictured center is Flight Lieutenant R.W.K. Robin Purser. At the time the EFTS book came out, he had taken over 400 photos. Most of these photos were shown in the book. Top left, CFI Lang shakes hands with Corporal Dawson of the Service Police and the Airmen's Banquet on Christmas Day. Top right, you can do much on an empty stomach. You can't do much on an empty stomach. Pictured here are the officers' mess staff for Neepawa EFTS, back row: Jeanette Smithson, Lillian Collins, Barbara Babs or Barbita Grant, Tessie Draveski, and Eva Battershell. Front row: Beulah Spackman, Chief Art Peabody, Helen Rodenboer, and Flossie Crawford. Bottom left pictured is Mr. J.W. Humphrey, manager of the EFTS Neepawa. Bottom right, Mrs. Evie Hemmingson and her panel wagon. Hemmingson was responsible for running errands and communication to and from the Neepawa Air Base. There we go. J. Husband's World War II service. Submitted. Neepawa Banner Press. The following entry is a recollection written by Lance Bombardier John Thomas Husband and is included in the Beautiful Plains Museum's War Project. I was 18 and a half years old when in April 1942 I joined up with the Royal Winnipeg Rifles in Winnipeg and took my basic training at the Fort Garry Barracks. I was there for 3 months. And when they were to leave there, the word came that the Winnipeg Rifle Regiment was full, and so we were transferred to an anti-tank regiment and were sent to Petawawa, Ontario. by train. This occurred about August 1st, 1942. I took my advanced training there, and while here I developed scarlet fever. I was in the isolation hospital for 29 days and under quarantine. My illness was discovered while our unit was on a 12-mile route march. I developed a high fever, red blotches on my body. The medical officer took a look at me and sent me to hospital. Our advanced training consisted of shooting at moving targets with a 2-pounder anti-tank gun and a 4-man crew. Sometimes I would load the gun, and at other times I would do the firing. We stayed in Petawawa until the 12th of December 1942, and then we went by train to Halifax and boarded the Queen Elizabeth I and sailed for England. I received 1 stripe, which classed me as a lance bombardier before leaving Canada. And when we got to England, everyone got knocked down 1 rank, and so I lost my 1 stripe and was classed as a gunner. I regained it back before going to Italy. We landed at Greenock, Scotland on December 17th, 1942, and then went to Edinburgh, Scotland, and took the train to Surrey, England, to an army camp. From here, we took training on larger guns, which fired a 6-pound projectile. For training, we used to go on schemes like war games up around Oxford, England, where there were lots of church spires. These expeditions would last for 3 weeks at a time. We moved to a new camp which was called Whitley, near a town called Godalming. Here we did a large amount of guard duty, mainly around water towers, so the German spies could not poison our water. While in England, I took an equipment repair course in Brigden. This gave me the status of tradesman with extra pay. This course got me a job in Italy working on a postal route. Because several AWOLs, I was put in their place and was headed toward Italy in November of 1943. We left by troop ship from England and went to Algiers in North Africa. It took us 14 days to get from Liverpool, England to Algiers. We stayed in Algiers for 3 weeks, living in tents and performed guard duty around the camp to keep the Arabs from stealing our equipment. Algiers was extremely hot. We set sail in another troop ship down the Mediterranean to Naples, Italy, and then by truck to Lucera, Italy, where we spent Christmas in 1943. For Christmas, we had canned chicken. After Christmas, we took our guns and equipment up as far as a place called Foscasia, north of Rome, and saw some action in the early spring of 1944. About 20 of my unit were sent south to Avellino, where the headquarters of the Canadian Army was, and we were to form a new unit called the 1st Postal Tracing Section. We were all tradesmen and not regular gunners. While in Italy, I was a lance bombardier. We were in Italy until the war in Italy ended, and then took our equipment by boat from Leghorn, Italy, traveled to Marseille, France via the Mediterranean Sea, and then by truck convoy to an area called Gannat, Belgium. This journey took about 2 weeks. We set up a postal station, tracing section, in the village of Lot, Belgium, about 12 miles from Brussels. We sorted the mail for the Canadian troops who were still fighting in Germany and Holland. We stayed at Lot, Belgium until the war was over in Europe on May 6, 1945. Our unit was then disbanded and we worked to occupational troops until January 1946. This was mainly guard duty to make sure the civilians were taken care of. In January 1946, I was sent to Nijmegen, Holland, where I sailed for Liverpool, England, and from there on another boat to Halifax, Canada. This was February 1946. The train took me back to Winnipeg to the Fort Osborne Barracks, where I was discharged from the Army. We were given our medals at the Osborne Barracks. Mine included Volunteer Service Medal, Defense of Britain Star, Italy Star, France Germany Star, 1939 to 45 Medal, the Victory Medal. In April of 1948, I rejoined the Army in Winnipeg and was sent to Shiloh, Manitoba with the anti-tank artillery. In 1949, this regiment became airborne and I took parachute jump training at Rivers, Manitoba and Shiloh, where there were jump towers. I did 11 jumps. I stayed in the Army because until May of 1951. Because of sickness at home, I had to leave the Army. I had hoped to carry on for longer, but it was not to be. And that is pictured Lance Bombardier John Thomas Hubband. Hubband was born in Brookdale on October 2nd, 1923, and passed away December 7th, 1921, while surrounded by his family. Remembrance Day services details. Due to COVID-19, legions in the Banner Press coverage area are moving forward with services. However, they have been adjusted in order to ensure that all involved are safe. The details for these services have been printed here in full so that many wishing to participate may plan accordingly. Please note that these details are current as November 2nd. Readers are advised to watch for potential updates from legions leading up till November the 11th. Neepawa services. The Yellowhead Hall will not be used for Remembrance Day service this year. Instead, a smaller service is to take place at the town's cenotaph on November 11th. The march will begin at approximately 10:45 with services commencing at 11 a.m. Wreaths will be pre-placed for the ceremony with one reserved for placement during the proceedings. Any who may be within the service area are asked to wear masks, socially distance, avoid groups larger than 5, and adhere to any other COVID-19 protocols that may be pertinent. The Neepawa Legion will not be having a luncheon this year. Erickson services. The Erickson Legion will be conducting their services on November the 11th at 10:45. The proceedings will take place outdoors in front of the cenotaph adjacent to the Erickson Legion on the 1st Street Southwest. Drive-in type parking on the street will be allowed and social distancing protocols will be in effect. 3 wreaths will be placed prior to the ceremony. Those wanting to place a wreath personally can do so after the ceremony concludes. The Erickson Legion will also conduct a service of remembrance at the Clan William Cenotaph at 1 p.m. that same day. Both locations will be shortened service. There will be no lunch after the services this year. Menadosa services. Due to the COVID-19, Menadosa Legion Branch 138 will not be holding the usual service at the community hall. Instead, the Legion will play a tribute of laying wreaths for all veterans at the cenotaph on November the 11th at 11 a.m. Gladstone services. A full private service for those as executive members of the Legion will take place at 10:45 a.m. on November the 11th. 1 wreath will be laid at the cenotaph for all veterans, followed by a prayer, salute, a moment of silence, and march. At this time, members of the general public are asked not to participate. However, all are welcome from 11:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. to come to the cenotaph, to lay their poppies and to enjoy a musical tribute. The Gladstone Legion is not doing a tag day this year, but poppies will be available at local businesses and the clubroom. Plumas. The Plumas branch of the Royal Canadian Legion will be having a regular Remembrance Day service at the cenotaph at 11 a.m. on November the 11th. All are welcome to participate in the ceremony at this time. However, all COVID-19 regulations such as social distancing are to be followed. Due to the pandemic, the Plumas branch has opted to not hold a lunch after the service this year. Kelwood services. Royal Canadian Branch number 50 will be hosting an outdoor service at 10:30 on November the 11th. The service is to be 10 minutes outdoors at the cenotaph. Carberry services. Legion Branch number 145, Carberry and District will conduct a scaled-down Remembrance Day service. The service is to be held outdoors at the cenotaph on Main Street in Carberry, beginning at 10:45 a.m. Most wreaths will be preset prior to the ceremony. Last post and 2 minutes of silence will be at 11 a.m. The Carberry Legion will not have a luncheon this year due to COVID-19 protocols and concerns. McCreary services. The McCreary Legion will be holding a service at the Cenotaph on November the 11th, 10:45 a.m. All in attendance must abide by the COVID-19 regulations set out by the province. Banner staff, Banner Press, published with honor. This Remembrance Day issue is published in honor of this region's remaining veterans. Eleanor Scott, Army, OBE. Shirley Anderson, Army. Kelly Bell, RCN. Dudley Lee, RCAF. Alfred Newton, RCAF. Merv Dagg. Ab Kingdon, Korean vet. Al Potter. James Loban. Vida Jackson. Sigurd Bjarnason, 12M Manitoba Dragoons. Jim Clark, Korean War. Ted Clark, Army. W.R. Crooks. M.A. Davidson, 12 Manitoba Dragoons. Thomas Delgatti, RCAF. Margaret Dunphy, Fred Eschpeter, RCAF. John William Fleury. Robert Patrick Fleury. B.W. Grant, Army. Mark Gunderson. D.B. Hopkins, Army. Leonard Luker, RCAF. Robert McSimic, Service Corps. David Manzel, RCAF. Wayne M. Manzel, Air Force. Gordon McManus. Raymond Newstead. Thomas Ritchie, Navy. James Turner, RCAF. Raymond Vezu. Mike Jawa, World War II. C.W. Richard. C.W. Gunnarsson. Leo Lalonde. J.R. Marshall. L. Lee. L. Foster. A. Kingdon. V. Boschwitz. M. Cooley. Albert Kingdon. August Sobry. Kenneth Habbing. David Much. Elgin Bayette. Ronald Egginton. Roger Whittington. Blair Gilmore. John Anderson. Troy Anderson. Wayne Bates. Hank Beck. Gilbert Bell. Foko Burma. B-U-U-R-M-A, Burma. Bob Dane. Sharon Dane. Dennis Davies. Wayne DeLon. James R. Drysdale. Christopher Flood. Jonathan Ferber. Arthur Gauthier. Peter George. Frank Hambrook. Tricia Harp. Garth Harbrook. Ward Jackson. David Jenkins. Doug Jones. Matthew Keddy. Gregory Lyon. Paul Marchand. Tammy Murray. Michelle Peters. Jason Power. Ward Reed. Brian Robertson. Darren Snyder. Tony Vasey. Al Watkins. Fred Wingrove. As well to any we may have missed and all their fellows who have passed and gone. The Gladstone Legion extends its thanks to all of its remaining veterans. So right now I'm on page 8, Jeremy, and I'm going to read this, and then I have one more additional that I want to add in from my own phone, okay? So this is a memorial for years to come. Minnedosa's Legion Banner Project now features 108 veterans by Casper Wernhan, Neepawa Banner Press. It's a project of longevity. Last year, the Minnedosa Legion branch number 138 unveiled a collection of 25 double-sided banners to feature a total of 50 Minnedosa and area veterans, meant to last for years to come. The banners are complete with a photo of the veteran, dates and the service each individual was active in, from World War I to Afghanistan. Each banner is hung in June with the assistance from the town staff and taken down after November the 11th. The project was originally proposed in 2018 with families and friends of veterans offering financial support to cover the $15,000 project, ensuring it could move forward. As of October 8th, the Minnedosa Legion now has enough banners to feature 108 veterans, an increase of 29 additional banners. Growth expected. With advertising or articles printed about us, I imagine the project will still be growing even after this, said John McCrendricks, head of the project committee and second vice president of the Minnedosa Legion. The response has been fantastic. It's the community and families involved with the veterans that have come forward that made it the success it is. Medricks noted that some who have been in contact with the committee extend far past the boundaries of Manitoba. Some of the families that are involved with the sponsoring of the veterans are as far away as Vancouver, Edmonton, and Toronto, Medricks explains. So some families aren't present here, but they want their veterans that lived here to be recognized. It's been really far-reaching. This year in particular, Mendricks said the committee are happy the project was able to come to fruition in 2019. Due to COVID-19, the Minnedosa Legion won't be able to hold its ceremonies as usual. The formalities of Remembrance Day are going to be rather subdued. Mendricks relayed. So the banners kind of highlight the lead up to Remembrance Day. That view, while it's not necessarily new now, adds to the Remembrance Day celebration we're going to have, Mendricks added. Plus, by putting them up at a certain time, it creates a greater impact, and hopefully more and more travelers will start coming around in June to view them. Mendricks, the committee, and the Legion hope that as soon as other communities see what they are doing, that those communities will pursue something similar. This would allow for more communities to have a year-round display in recognition of their veterans. So that is the end of the Remembrance Day 2020 commemorative edition. But I do have one more little item that I want to add to that, Jeremy. And it's not far away. This has been posted in the banner from other years. And it is a story from Enica Decoding, Enica Mack, from Its Time, Fashion, and Gifts. And it's a story that's just warms your heart. So I'm going to read it to you today. Most of you have heard my bike story before, but every year around Remembrance Day, I give it some extra thought again. This bike is about 80 years old. Just before World War II started, when my 10-year-old dad, his brothers, and their dad, my Opa, bought it as a gift for my Oma, their mom. Soon after the war started and the Netherlands was invaded and occupied, the family lived along the main road to the border with Belgium in a big house with several barns. A perfect setup for Nazi headquarters. My dad's family was driven out of their house and yard, and it was taken over by the enemy. The last thing Dad and his brothers did before leaving was to take his bike and hide it up in the hayloft, deep under the hay. Opa and Oma and their 7 children lived with relatives for 5 years while the war raged on, with no idea how their farm and house was faring through this time. In May 1945, the Canadian Army showed up in town, and news of the liberation. My mom and dad always got a smile and a sparkle in their eyes when they talked about that day. The Nazis tried to blow up the house and yard because of the papers and intelligence left there. But as luck would have it, the lit fuse, as it was creeping towards the house, extinguished, and the place was saved. Still standing strong today, and still with a Deconing family living in it. With everything going on, the bike was forgotten about for years and years. It wasn't until much later that quite by accident it was found again. For my 13th birthday, Dad had it all fixed up for me, and I rode that thing wherever my fancy would take me, usually school or work. LOL. And when we moved to Canada in 1980, the bike came with us. And once I got married and we bought our own house, my dad once again fixed it up for me, and it now hangs proudly on my wall in the hallway as a proud reminder that if it wasn't for the bravery of our soldiers, many of us wouldn't be alive, let alone to enjoy the freedoms we have. Never forget. And there's a nice little picture of the bike. And that ends our Remembrance Day for 2020. I'll take a moment to give thanks for the world that we live in, and hopefully we can keep the peace. We'll say goodbye with that.